Welcome.
It's not live yet.
Hi, welcome. You've reached
What's troubling you
with
with
Chantel
Chantel?
and Charlene. And we're here with Valerie Mitchell this evening. And we are super excited. We're going to allow Valerie to introduce herself and to talk about the topic that we're going to talk about today. This is so sit, hold tight. If you have questions and if you're logging on our live component, please ask questions and we will be able to answer those questions. So I'm excited. Welcome, Valerie. Welcome.
Hi, thank you all for having me. So excited to be here. As Miss Charlene said, I'm Vallery Mitchell, and I am the founder and owner of the Foster and Dream Dallas Empire that many people out here in Dallas see today. And so, you want me to go ahead and go into my story?
Yes,
Yes,
please.
ma'am.
Awesome. So I was brought here today to talk about my background and my story and how it relates to the empire I decided to start to serve children in foster care today. So I am 27 years old. When I was born, I was placed into the foster care system immediately at birth due to testing positive for cocaine, marijuana, and fetal alcohol syndrome, as well as syphilis, because my mother was still prostituting at the time she was pregnant with me. When she went to the hospital, the doctors asked her, when's the last time you used drugs? She said, oh, I don't use drugs. But then they found out she was using cocaine up to a week before I was born.
Wow.
And then they also asked her, were you drinking during your pregnancy? She said, I wasn't drinking or anything. And then it came out that she was drinking 6 to 8 cans of beer a day throughout her entire pregnancy. So upon birth, I was immediately placed in the NICU. They did not think I was going to survive those birth conditions. It was not looking good, but here we are today, a miracle. And
Yes.
I'm glad to say that I defied all odds that were against me at birth because that was some very tough circumstances to come through. A lot of children, even mentally, are never able to recover from that kind of birth situation. They thought I was going to be extremely delayed, extremely, not be able to even have a conversation like we're having today. And they thought I would need help for the rest of my life. But I believe I was released. They thought I was going to be in the hospital for probably 6 to 8 months. I was released from the hospital and placed in my first foster home within 5 days.
Oh,
So
wow.
I got out of the hospital really quickly and really recovered. And the only thing they were able to write on those discharge papers is they thought I had something with my chin. They thought it had to do with fetal alcohol syndrome. But that's the only thing they really noticed outside of a little bit of jaundice. So outside of those two things, I was a perfectly fine baby. They did place me in a primary medical needs home, which, if you're not familiar with the foster care world, that is a home for children who are severely ill, who need 24/7 care, who, again, people do not think they're going to survive. So I was placed in a primary medical needs home on that fifth day of being into this world. And oddly enough, within 2 years, I had to leave that home due to being way too active, basically due to being way too normal. So they were like, hey, you're too hyperactive for this home. We're going to have to put you in a regular home because there were other children there that truly didn't need to be there. They needed the good caregivers' attention. And so they had to put me in a regular home with regular children because I was not special needs, I was not primary medical needs or anything along those lines. And so about 3 years old, they did move me to a regular foster home. And so the couple of effects that I did have from birth, which this is what the doctors are saying, is ADHD was a result of the drug use during the pregnancy. And so at the young age of 3, they did start medicating me with different psychiatric medications. At 27 today, I do not agree with being medicated as a 3-year-old child for a psychiatric diagnosis. I personally believe it's too soon. Some
Mhm.
of the descriptions were, she's hyper or she's running around. I'm here to tell y'all that's what toddlers do. Toddlers are going to be running around, do whatever they want to do, and that's not you. You shouldn't go get medication for those kinds of things. So, and by the age of 3, they were already trying Ritalin. They were already trying Adderall. And they tried a couple more medications, and they kept trying stuff, and in the notes they were saying it's not working. Well, of course not, because truly I didn't need to be medicated. I needed to be allowed the space to grow as a child, in which they were not allowing me to do. And so, even by the age of 3, they attempted to diagnose me with bipolar schizophrenic, aggression, and all of those other things, and continued to try to medicate me all the way until 6 years old. And then, by the age of 6 years old, I was placed with my forever family, and my mother, who adopted me, she was a true advocate, and she said, "Well, what's going on here? Let's cut all of this out." And she did stop all of the medications. While I was in foster care, I'm a huge foster care advocate, and a huge about paying attention to the children in the system. While in foster care, on top of being medicated, I was sexually assaulted in my second foster home. The caregiver took me to a cousin's house, and the cousin sexually assaulted me. And I was reading my case file, and the worker wrote, she's trying to tell us that something happened to her, but the worker didn't really dig into it. So she never really tried to dig into what happened. But that did happen in that second foster home. And again, all this happened before the age of 6 years old. So you have, coming into this world with all these drugs, and then placed into a primary medical needs home, then moved to another caregiver, placed on more medications. And at that time where they felt I'm acting out or I'm aggressive, I'm trying to tell them someone has hurt me, and
Mm.
they're not putting two and two together. And so, overcome all of that, and you keep pushing, because children are more resilient than adults give them credit for. Children are going to move on if you give them the space to move on. They're definitely going to do just that. Give them a positive environment to thrive after trauma, and they will overcome that situation. Be a helper, not someone that holds them back. And so I was adopted by the age of 6 by my forever family, and I love them to the death of me, of course. And my mom, when I first got to her, of course, she like, let's stop all these medications. And it wasn't until I actually got to my adoptive family I understood that I was sexually assaulted in a foster home. Because my adoptive mom, as most mothers I'm hoping do, people shouldn't touch you here, people shouldn't touch you there. Sometimes caseworkers forget to have those talks with these children, and that's a very good talk they need to have with these kids, so they know the moment they're assaulted. So it wasn't until my mom bought me this book I'll never forget, from The American Girl, and it's a book called This Is Your Body, and it tells you all about your body as a young lady. And it tells you about, this shouldn't happen, this shouldn't happen. And that's when I was able to communicate to her, well, this happened to me there. And she told me, she cried, she boo-hooed. My parents were devastated it happened. But we moved forward as a family over that. And it's something that never happened again, because I knew how to verbalize if someone was touching me inappropriately. And again, my parents protected me like no other, to not put me in a situation for that to happen. And then, after my forever family and after 6 year olds, things were really looking up. I didn't really experience much trauma after that, which is a true blessing. I know every foster youth out there does not have that same testimony. I understand some foster youth have to spend all 18 years in the system, and then they have to get out of this system, and they're just forgot about. And so that's why I really focus on coming out here at 27, doing this kind of work is rare. People are always like, you're so young to be doing this. Well, I have to appeal to the children in the system now to let them know there is a brighter tomorrow. You will make it. You have to keep by. It's not going to be easy. That's the number one thing. People think it's going to be easy. They see me now and think all of this was easy. It was not. There was a lot of turmoil, a lot of hurt, a lot of, things that went on to get to where we are today, and just trusting each part of that process of moving on and overcoming to get where we are today. But I just need those foster youth to know that if you truly believe in yourself, you can succeed and you can overcome this system. And so, after being adopted, the only trauma I truly ever experienced was just people always say I have an old soul. So that wasn't even trauma. People just, you have an old soul. Some people would ask, my family is very tall. So my dad's 6'7", my mom's 6'4". I mean, my mom's 6'2", my brother's 6'4", and I'm 5'3". So going around, people are like, what's wrong with you? Like, what's like, did you get the missing link? And so I would just blurt out, I'm adopted. And then they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, well, why are you sorry? That's what happened. So that's how I learned to start vocalizing this adopted thing and just getting it out there, because then I realized people were sad for you if you're adopted, and there's nothing to be sad about. That's something that we should celebrate. Being adopted and getting out of that system is something that we want to hand clap and say, hallelujah, thank you, you got out and look at you now. But outside of that, everything with this my forever family, I love to this day. I do know one of the things I dealt with growing up as a foster child, though, and I had to openly communicate with my parents, and not really my parents, it was my mom, is I was always looking for my biological family. So a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people don't understand. It doesn't matter what that biological family did to that person. They want to know them. They want to at least know, and okay, that's who they are. Okay, I understand now. That hole is closed. It was a hole in my heart just because I didn't know them whatsoever until I was 23 years old. I had no clue who they were. I had no clue what they looked like. I just had, the life book they give you once you leave the system. And so I'm just out here like, but who are they? I want to know. And they told me I have 5 siblings, which that's a lot of people you're not knowing.
Right.
That's 5 brothers and sisters you're not able to know. I'm like, I want to know. I used to grow up saying, if I don't do anything else, I want to meet my brother. I want to meet my sisters. And so I do have 2 older, so I was the baby in the family and the only one removed from all of them. And so I do have 2 older sisters, with my oldest sister being about 40. Then the next one, she's about 36. And then my 2 brothers, in which I'm closest to in age, they're about 30 and 29. And then there's, and so I've always wanted to know them. And then I ended up finding them. And when I turned 23 years old and we met, and it was a nice experience. It was a lot to process. It took years to process that. I met them. I was glad, okay, the hole closed. I know who they are. They're alive and well, particularly. But then there was just still some pieces. I remember till this day, so I met them roughly 5 years ago. I remember to this day when meeting them, one family member, they said that day when I met them, you need to be happy you got adopted. You need to be glad. And yeah, to me, I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, you just need to be happy. And then as we kept going around house to house, meeting more family, I started to understand, okay, I understand a little bit, but you all need to understand too, that's not the way. It shouldn't be a way out for you all to accept responsibility. Because of course, now the picture looks pretty, it looks great, but I still had to go through some things in that system because you all didn't want to accept responsibility. And again, by the grace of God, I was able to be adopted 1 more year and I would have aged out, as we all know. Because African-American children they really don't get adopted after the age of 5, especially with African-American children who they feel have issues. And they had already started labeling me, like I said, schizophrenia, bipolar, ADHD, ODD, aggression, manic this, manic that, all before 6. So I already had all the labels to basically never get adopted. And then my family who resides in Dallas said, we want to get a kid outside of Dallas. And they got me from Killeen, Texas. But, I'll always forget, I'll always remember what that family member said, you need to be happy. And, it took maybe 3 years for me to understand what he was saying. And so I look back and it's a part of that generational trauma and that generational stuff that's going on. And, when they look at me, I'm like the only one in the family out there that's, has a business, that has this going on. That's a positive light. And I didn't even grow up with them. They didn't raise me or anything like that. So from the outside looking in, for them, the system was good for me. And for me, although now till this day I do feel the same, I still think they should have accepted their responsibility, because some things didn't have to happen if they did. But as we move on, I learn more and more each year about them and all the things that they have encountered and went through. And I start to understand more of my mother, which has been a battle. Every day is a battle to understand and not dislike her. So some people are like, you should hate her. Um, I don't hate anybody. It takes a lot of energy to hate people. Do I agree with the choices she made? Absolutely not. But then you have to think about, would I even be who I am today had she not made her choices? Would I understand how to overcome adversity if she didn't make her choices? And so I was very mad at her the first time I met her, due to her being drunk the first time I met her. And so for me,
Yeah.
right. That's what I said, Chantel. I said, still 23 years later, you still, you couldn't take a little break. You're meeting your child that they took from you 23 years later. You couldn't take a break. So that, at the time I met her, I was vegetarian. And when she did that, I made my mom drive me to Whataburger. I said, I need a burger. I don't know what's going on. Take me to Whataburger. I'm about to have a burger. So I had that burger and we tried to process the whole 2-hour drive. And I just kept saying over and over, why would she do that? Why would she not be sober to meet me again? I don't understand. But then because I do work with the system, possibly she couldn't handle meeting me sober. Maybe that might have been too much for her brain to understand and handle. And then I have to learn and understand everyone's cognitive abilities to handle certain situations is not the same. So where we can sit here and say, you should have done X, Y, and Z, their cognitive ability might not have allowed them to do that.
Right.
And so she coped with possibly drinking that day. And so it took about a year and some change to understand that and no longer even be mad at her for that. And so after that, I just started to actually go down there and visit her once a year around her birthday and just see her as a human being. If allow her to enjoy her life. She understands what she did. There's no need for me to come in, make it like, I don't need to point out the obvious. No one needs to point out the obvious. She understands that you lost the opportunity to see this child grow up, and all of those things. So I'm just gonna let you be your human. I'm not going to let you affect my emotions anymore because I can't give you that power, as you are not owed that power. And we all do have to move on. Because I did later learn there's things that went on in her life that led to her trauma, that led to her decision. And just she's human, just like some of the other people we serve in the system. So it started to make me understand, hey, I understand now, because that's hard to get over, or that would be hard to overcome, especially for people that don't have the ability to. And Colleen's a rough city, if no one is familiar with it. It's a very rough city. It's a rough city to be in. It's hard to be out there. So I definitely understood what she was going through. So I really, really grew up and just kept pushing it forward. One thing I finally started to understand my trauma and how it played out and how I interacted with others. And I did not start making true connections and personal bonds with people until I was about 25 years old. So roughly 2 years ago. I finally went to therapy when I was 25 after starting to read the case file, read everything that was going on. I went into this like state of shock. As at 25, that's so when trauma happens to someone, they go into a state of shock. And when they come out of this state of shock, no one will ever know. It's different for everyone. So I went into my state of shock, of course, around the age of 3, and I came out at 25. And so really roughly everything before then is somewhat a blur. And I remember bits and pieces. I remember I had fun in high school. I remember doing this and I remember that. But when I looked back, did I make true personal connections with people? I did not. One thing I always said was I felt people were disposable. Because I just would not connect to humans. I would not do that. And then I finally understood it was because of the way I was brought into the world. They do truly say it's very important for skin to skin care. Those first 3 years are very important for that mother child connection. I had neither of those, so it did play a part in how I connect with humans today. And so it has taken me a long time, and I still struggle today to not believe people are disposable. I believe walking away from humans is the easiest and better answer instead of dealing with them. And so all of those small things come from the childhood in which I experienced before being adopted. And so those are just some of the little effects of, coming from the foster care system. And when you get out here and you're interacting with other people and you don't understand why they're not connecting to you or they're not opening up to you, or no matter how hard you tried, why they don't trust you, just try to see where they came from or what their history is. And that could definitely be one of the reasons, especially if they were older when they got out of the system. The older you get in that foster care system, the worse it's going to get for how you bond with people. You have to move. One person could experience 16 placement changes in 1 year. So just imagine having to drop your friends and leave 16 times. There's no point in making friends anymore at that point. There's no point in building bonds anymore after that point.
I
Uh,
want to jump in. I want to jump in real quick
Go ahead.
because we're going to talk about more about the adult piece, and I
Mhm.
want to go back a little bit. Um, we had another segment. We were talking about domestic violence last month, and we were talking about the damage that's done in utero
Mhm.
for infants. And so the process of trauma starting not just after the child is born, but actually it starts in
Wow.
utero with all the things that the baby, the infant, has to go through before its birth, especially if the mother is using or they're doing all kinds of things, or have a lot of things going on, a lot of negative, they're in a negative environment, and how that impacts that. Um, you mentioned some things. Early on when you were first born about the first placement you were in, and that was very interesting. um, and I remember when I was working in foster care, we had certain houses that created were hospice, like a hospice facility, hospice houses. This is back in the 80s, so I have to be clear with that. Things have changed over the years.
Mhm.
And we had children who were placed in those. And so some of that system is still prevalent from years ago, back in the 80s to you grew up in the 90s, 2000s, correct?
Right. I
Yeah.
was placed
So
in the system in 94.
94. So it was still going on. And it is so odd to hear this because this is, I was in another state and you were in Texas. And so that whole transition of how the foster care system actually works was still congruent from state, obviously from state to state. It still
Mhm.
had that same premise and belief system. But I'm glad that you were able to bring that out, and what happens to children. One of the things I wanted to kind of put voice to was the fact that you brought up when children come into homes, when people, now back in the days, they had this thing in New York called border babies. And I don't know if you ever heard of that term before, but in the crack epidemic, there was so many kids who were born out in the street, and they were born all in these crack houses. They told these pregnant women to come into the hospital, city hospitals, and go ahead and have these babies, no strings attached, and they would take the baby. So once the baby is born, they check the umbilical cord, they see if the baby is positive toxic cocaine or positive toxic whatever, and then the system comes in. But they changed it back then because there was so many babies, and they just put the babies in the system from the hospital. Um,
Mhm.
and from that point, parents were getting, and this is the truth, foster care, they were getting $1,300 per baby
Right.
back in the day, okay? And so you could live in the projects and get about 3 or 4 kids. Max house will be 6 kids. There's no more than 6 kids in the house. And I remember this because I had a lot of babies who were in the system, and I was doing home visits. But the point that I really, that kind of struck me when you said about when people get these children, one of the things that I just think is so important is that they screen these people now, and find out what your intent is. I think intention would play a huge part because you didn't get a forever home. Your forever home, had they been a temporary home who nurtured you, they would have bypassed all of this other stuff and helped you through or prevented additional trauma. I
Right.
mean, one thing is the traumatized being birthed and have to live in utero with all of that. That's why I said that. But to place you in an environment that is not safe, and you're right, from 1 to 5, those are the developmental years. So, and you're right, if they don't get adopted after that, it's kind of a null situation. They could travel from home to home to home. And I work for the criminal justice system, and so they end up where either in juvenile or they end up in the adult criminal justice system. And in Texas, that's 17. So again, here's a complete interruption of this individual's life without having some intervention. So thank God for your forever parents. They're wonderful. So we want to give them kudos. Yes.
Yes.
But I want to talk about those people. What are your thoughts? I just voiced mine, but what are your thoughts about these parents or even the system screening these people to give them these children who they know is temporary?
Right.
You
And
know?
so my biggest thought is I heard a quote a while back and it stuck with me, and I believe it's 100% true. And it said, foster care is the gateway to human trafficking. And it is.
Mhm.
Wow.
And so if you let that sink in, it's true, especially when these children get older. So when you get older, you hear these people talking about you when they're going to place children. There's levels, there's basic, moderate, and all
Mhm.
this. And you get more money the higher this child is. So when you heard me say they were calling me bipolar, manic, this and that, they were trying to get more money.
Mhm.
And so if you label these children a certain way, you'll get more money to provide care for them. And then you're supposed to use that money to help that child or give them more activities, maybe put them in more therapy, but
Yeah.
therapy's paid for by the state.
Mhm.
Everything's almost paid for. So what are you doing with all this money? I don't see why it would take, and this is me personally, up to 2,000 something dollars to care for a child just because they have bipolar when everything else is actually paid for by the state. So what did you need, the $2,000 for? And so when you get older, these children hear their service levels and they know these people are getting paid to take care of them, which is the exact same thing as human trafficking. Those people are paying, but they see human trafficking and they're like, well, at least I get some of this money back. Somebody's paying them to use them or whatnot. So
Mhm.
as far as the money part goes, these children don't see the gray line of course, human trafficking is a bit more dangerous than foster care, but they are running neck and neck these days.
Mhm.
As we know, it's getting very gruesome in the foster care world. But these people are getting paid to take care of children, and I have never understood that. If you want to help a child, help that child. It
Right.
shouldn't come to a dollar amount
Well,
ever.
you, well, we work for the system, but when I was in alternative response, they
Hmm.
had a bunch of child deaths, and it were because they were placed with a
Relative.
foster family or a relative.
Mm.
And I have always said they took this child from their parents because they thought it was unsafe. But you placed them with somebody else and they died.
Right.
And
And
there's no
that's
accountability.
very rough.
Yes.
That's very, very rough. Or same situation. You took me from my family you said wasn't safe. But you
Mhm.
put me here and I was still sexually assaulted. So as a
Mhm.
kid, I'm like, that could have happened at the house. I didn't
Right.
even have to go to all these different people's houses for this. That I could have stayed at home for this. And maybe it would have never happened. And so, you know, I hope foster care is not painted as this picture. And so that's what I was saying earlier. I think my family thought foster care is something golden. And I want them to know it's not a better life, it's not a easier life, it's not,
Mhm.
nothing's better about it. If not worse.
Mhm.
So, but you just see me today, so you think it must have been great. It must have been awesome. No way.
They
Absolutely not.
they
So,
see the glory, but they don't know your story.
right. And that rhymes. So yes, you're absolutely right. But yeah, I truly believe that foster care is the gateway to human trafficking. And I think that these people are getting paid a high amount of money to do bare minimum work with the children. And I personally, as a former foster youth, don't understand. I don't understand why there would be different levels. Even today we have billboards begging people to be foster parents. I don't understand. Is that even safe? So now you're putting this message. We're begging, begging, begging people to be foster parents. We do one little document on them, hoping they tell the truth, and then we say, okay, yeah, you're good, not knowing they left a whole nother state. 3 kids died in their care, and just because we couldn't get the records in time, oh, they must be okay. So it's a really ugly system. And I think that, one thing about my family, so there's two different ways. My family decided to be adoption only. And so if we start putting kids in more permanent placements immediately, instead of right now, children go into temporary managing conservatorship,
Mhm.
probably initially. And so they have to spend a year or two in care while the system is trying to work with their bio family to give them back. So that year or whatnot, they're in there. That's probably where most of their trauma occurs.
Mhm.
And then after that, then the system is then looking for their forever homes.
Right.
And even, as times grow on, these forever homes we're seeing more and more adopted children come back.
What have you been seeing in the news where these children are missing? It was one little girl from Hawaii.
hmm
They reported her missing, and they just charged her adopted family with murdering her.
And then, well, I didn't see that story particular, but there are a lot of these missing children are foster children.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you see a kid online that's missing, 9 times out of 10, they are foster youth. They see no point in bouncing from foster home to foster home. They didn't decide that they'll just go get their own life, and that's usually when they enter the human trafficking field.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I say foster care is the gateway to human trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with the older you get in foster care, the more privileges they actually take away instead of give. Could you imagine being 15, no cell phone, you can't play on the basketball team at school, you can't get a job, you can't do this, just because your foster parent doesn't want you to,
Right.
despite it being normalcy.
Right.
And so they see this is jail to them,
Yeah.
which is understandable, especially in the world today where everything's, they can't even have social media. They can't even do this. But all the other kids are doing it. When they go to school, they can't even relate to the children. They can't have fun. So now we've decreased their social ability dramatically. So when we're asking them, well, why can't you just process your feelings? And why can't you do this? They don't know how.
Right.
They don't
No,
know how.
Valerie, when I remember, and when you said that, I started thinking about when I was working foster care. I had one family that I remember that this happened to, and I went to this woman's house, and this is again back in the '80s. I went to this woman; it might have been in the '90s because I left in like the early '90s, and I went to this woman's house, and she had two little children. They were not siblings. She had an infant and a toddler. She was about she wasn't a toddler. She was about 5 or 6. And I remember every time I would make this home visit, um, we had a checklist to use. And in the checklist, you have to check the refrigerators, you got to check the rooms. And I would check the rooms, and the kids would always the baby was always in the crib.
Mm,
And I couldn't understand it. I was a parent by that time because when I started working in foster care, I wasn't a parent yet. but while I was there, I became a parent. And so what was odd to me was every time, when I'm coming, I'm not doing a surprise visit, when I'm showing up. And
Right.
every time I came, I had this eerie feeling that something, it was just too right. Like something's abnormal here, right? And then I remember the visit before I made a complaint. That particular visit, the kid ran up to me um, and she was trying to tell me something, and the foster mother was like, "Now you leave Charlene alone. She's here to talk to me." I said, "No, I'm here to talk to her too."
Right.
You know, and by this time, I had been working in foster care about 5 years by that time, and I was like, "What's wrong?" And so the foster mother was like, "Just go on now, let Charlene talk." I says, "I would like to talk to her too." And then she hovered. The foster mother hovered, which was to me was a flag, because all the foster parents I had, they were just like, so you want to walk through? You can walk through. Go ahead. You can go to the rooms. Go ahead. You're at home too, Charlene. Just go. They were real nice to me. Those
Mhm.
were parents who were taking care of the kids. Okay.
Mhm.
They would never ever like inhibit me to do anything. But this woman, it struck me like really odd. She didn't want me to talk to the children. She didn't want me to be alone with the children. And even when I was in the bedroom, the door was closed with this baby in the bed, which I thought was odd. Like, who
Right.
leaves a baby in a room with the door closed in the afternoon,
Mhm.
middle afternoon? Baby should be crawling around the room on the floor. And I just couldn't get it. And so I went back and I remember speaking to my supervisor. My supervisor said I had to talk to home finding and report it to home finding. And so I did, and they went out and did a check. They did a
Announce.
announced check, right? And so they came back, and when they went, the kids were in disarray.
Mm.
Mm.
They were in disarray, just nasty. And so they were shocked, they were upset. She was mad at me. She was mad at me. And we removed the children
Right.
because the fact finding, home finding department found out that it was just not suitable for kids. And she was like, so every time I would go, the house was so clean and so pristine. Okay.
And
But the
that's what
kids,
most people do.
it was so weird. It just, something didn't sit right. And so, and as you said that, I forgot about that story. And I remembered that, I remember this woman was so angry with me. She made all kinds of lies about me, that I came there just bum rushing house, which I did not do. Okay. And it was just not appropriate. She didn't want me looking in her cabinet. She's like, nobody else ever looked at my cabinets before. I said, well, I'm gonna look in your cabinets because that's what I'm supposed to do.
Mhm.
Okay. They're supposed to have food. Okay. She said, well, don't they like to have food? Yeah, but they're supposed to have food, you know.
Mhm.
And I always know when kids, I used to look at kids when they have visits in the office, and the interactions with their parents was just, if they were running to their parents, that was a flag for me,
Mm-hmm.
because something was going on, especially if they've been in a home or been in the system a long time. Why would they run to the parent? Because they really don't know this person.
Mhm.
Something's, and I said that to say that, sometimes I don't know if the case managers or what, I don't know what training looks like today, because again, that's over 20, 30 years ago now. And but you're right. I see it on the news. They talk about the forever children on WFAA. They talk about people wanting, to get to adopt. And I'm just like, why wouldn't they reach out to them when they're in their crisis, opposed to putting them on a TV show or the news to do that? And I agree with you. So I'm agreeing with you, because I'm having all these emotional flashbacks of the kids that I served. And that was my reason for getting out,
Right.
because I just did not, it was just so disheartening.
Because
You
all the work you wanted to do, you had to not only you had to fight to protect the children, but you were
Mhm.
fighting the system more than you thought you were
Right.
going to have to. Like the protective measures you were trying to take to save this child, your own possibly place of employment was the main thing hindering you.
But
Mhm.
I don't want to discredit. There were so many. I had so many good foster parents, like your parents are, who were started out as foster and
Mm-hmm.
then turned into forever homes. You know, they
Mm-hmm.
fell in love with these children, and they became forever homes. And I compliment those parents who started out in foster care and decided, no, I don't want to do this anymore like this. I want to take in my children. I want to keep my children. You know,
Right.
I want to be their parent. And I commend them. So I don't want to downgrade the ones that are good, but I do agree with you that, you know, there something needs to happen, that there are some sort of protocol made maybe at a high level that says there's another check system that needs to happen. You know, before we went on live, you and I, you were mentioning something, because I told you how young I was when I started, and you made a good point that maybe young people, no offense to
Mhm.
young people, millennials, should not be case managers, you know, because there's so much trauma, so much. And I think until I had a child, and this
Right.
is very honest, some things I think I looked over because I was just going through the motions, you
Mhm.
know. And
Or
when
you
I
just
became
were
a
unaware,
parent, I'm sorry,
or you were just unaware, like you didn't, you just didn't have
Mhm.
that little extra knowledge that sometimes is required.
because I was early 20s when I
Right.
started working. And so when I had my daughter, I don't know if I became super sensitive about this, or, you know, when I would see babies and certain things. I remember having a foster parent who, she was older, okay? She was a doll. She was so nice. And the baby, her baby and my daughter are the same age. And I remember going there and I noticed he didn't turn over. And she described it as him being lazy. And I said,
Lazy, a baby?
hmm, I don't think he's lazy, because he was fat. He was a very chunky baby and he just could not seem to roll over. And I said, something's wrong with that. And she said, I don't think anything's wrong, because he responds, he's happy. And he's very happy, baby. But he didn't have the functioning skills that should have been, because my daughter and him were the same age and she was sitting up, rolling over, doing all, and I'm like, something not right. And
Mhm.
so as I kept going, my daughter started doing other things that I know he wasn't doing.
Mm-hmm.
I suggested to her, let's have a workup done on him just
Right.
to make sure, because
Mhm.
maybe he's not just fat. Maybe he is not thriving. And
Mhm.
sure enough, because of the drugs, and it's funny, he was seeing a doctor and the doctor didn't know, like, really? Like,
She probably didn't know she needed to tell the doctor.
Mhm.
There's certain things you don't realize. If this child isn't doing X, Y, and Z, you need to tell the doctor.
Right.
Instead of thinking, oh, this child is just different. If your kid isn't talking about, I know some children don't talk until 5, but you can still go the extra mile and say they haven't mumbled any words yet, or something like that, or if their motor skills are not coming about. Mention that to the doctor. They're not doing good with their motor skills
doctor would
right
have done that. You thought the doctor would have asked those questions.
now.
Right.
Hmm.
They're
You know, my
supposed to.
pediatrician had a checklist and she was
Mhm.
like, what is she doing now? And she would
Hmm.
show me the actual milestones that she was
Mhm.
at, and how she was thriving. And so that's why I was like, did you talk to the doctor? She was like, no. And sure enough, we got him in time to a developmental center that helped him tremendously. He became fine. He was great, you know. And she had another child who stuttered. And that's what helped her, because she didn't realize that the child, when we had this issue with the baby, when she got this older, she got three children, a baby and a middle age and an older girl. The older girl, because of the trauma she had been in, she stuttered and
Right.
trying to help her. And she said, Shirley, I think something's wrong, because I noticed that at certain times, you know, and she started telling me stuff. So
Mhm.
she would, the foster mother was learning, and she adopted all 4 of these kids, which was awesome. She adopted all, and she was an older woman and she had grown children herself, but she went ahead and adopted 4 children. and she was wonderful. And so, and we noticed that the bigger girl didn't stutter until she got around her mother.
Mm,
Mm.
When
which is
she knew she had a
trigger.
visit coming, right, it was a trigger. And she would stutter. I mean, it was horrible when she couldn't even talk, like, and trying to get words out. And we were like, oh my goodness. So we realized that she needed to have some severe counseling. But, not to talk about all that, but just to kind of say that, things are still going on, and how
Mhm.
it, um, your ability to have some sort of advocacy in this helps out tremendously, and to be a voice of someone who's been there.
Mhm.
It's so awesome. What would you tell a person who wants to get in? Because sometimes there's some stigma. What would you tell a couple, okay, who says, you know what, I want to be a foster parent, but they've heard the war stories,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like you said, I'm gonna get a kid with problems, I'm gonna get
Mhm.
a kid who can't do, who can't do this, who can't do that. What would you tell them?
People ask me all this time, I want to foster. And I personally, because I believe it's a disservice to not tell the truth, I'm going to give you every raw truth there is about working with this system, not even just that child, about your
Mhm.
privacy gone, because we're popping up every day now. About,
Mhm.
although you might not have thought it was important to take this kid to the doctor every 6 months, if you don't, now I'm taking this kid from you. If you don't make sure this kid goes to dinner. So I'm telling them all of those little things on top of, I actually encourage people to go volunteer first, because trauma in each child is different. And
Mhm.
so we could tell people all day, I could sit here and tell you all day about this one child, but you're not going to know what I'm talking about until that child's with you. And then when that child starts to do everything that I said, because you have this open heart and that kid's not there yet. I could do it. I can handle it. I could do it. Okay, now I place the kid here. The kid doing exactly what I told you the kid was going to do. Now you cannot handle it.
Mhm.
And so I tell people, you need to go volunteer. These people are always needing volunteers, child placement agencies, CPS, shelters that have these traumatized children. Go volunteer first for a very long time.
What does
Truly.
volunteer look like?
So you could go, they might have where you bring meals, or they're just different little volunteer things you could do with these different agencies that
Right.
you of course have to go through all the steps and same background checks that a foster parent would. But they're always looking for different volunteers. I know, like my foundation, we host free events for foster youth. And because we're all pretty therapeutic people, we are, children are different, so we're able to assess each child and work with each child. But that's the kind of stuff you want to go get involved with, or even try to work at. Sometimes there's a lot of not single, but there's a lot of stay at home foster moms while the dad goes to work. So they could go try maybe part time at one of these places that have these children, just so you can see firsthand what this child is like and what trauma looks like in this child. And then you make a decision on, can I truly handle this? And I always tell people it takes more than love. You love children, that's great. We love that you love children, but it's going to take more than that. Love is not going to be what keeps this child in your home and keeps you happy, keeps your family happy. It's going to be a true up and down battle. It's
Mhm.
going to be a fight every day, especially if the child is older. So you need to truly adequately prepare yourself for these children before they get to you. The child getting to you shouldn't be the test room. You need to go do the work to learn about these children before they get to you, so we're not again traumatizing them again. So that way when we do give them to you, now we got to come pick them back up because you didn't really realize everything you're going to have to do. So
Mhm.
if foster care is something you're interested in, there's again just tons of things you could do to volunteer to get around these children more. One of the biggest things you could do to volunteer is CASA. They have a
Mhm.
front seat to um, being right there with these children, and actually these kids call them immediately if something's going on. So CASAs are court appointed special advocates. So you're appointed by the courtroom that child is case is being heard in, and you are required to work with that child until that child leaves the system. So that's the probably the number one way you could start getting involved. And then after possibly,
When you volunteer with CASA, they're not placed in your home, they're just, so what are you doing volunteer?
You're an
so,
advocate for them. You advocate for them. You go to court and
so
you,
you're basically an unbiased party in their
Mhm.
court case. So in a court case, you have the state that's there, you have your parents who are there, or your biological family that's there, and they have their attorneys. The state is there with their attorneys. And basically the state, and of course your parents, are fighting against each other about whose care you will be in. So they introduced CASA to come in as an unbiased party, and CASA's sole responsibility is to speak on the child's best interests. That's their only responsibility, as well as be that a little relaxed feeling from a legal aspect, because children also have their own attorneys in the court system.
Right, right.
So there's
Mhm.
3 parties, 3 attorneys, and then there's CASA, who's not a legal body, but just that volunteer. And so a lot of children kind of call their CASA worker first, before they call their caseworker or their own attorney. Um, and so, yeah. And let me pause for just 1 second. If you want to pick up on that, Chantel, about CASA.
I don't know that much about CASA, but it's a court appointed advocate and they advocate for the children, that are in foster care. Of course, they have to spend time with the children to know more about them so they can advocate for them.
What's the
Huh.
age group that a person can uh, advocate for a child? What age is that?
Anybody in foster care?
Any child in foster
Uh-huh.
care?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Mhm.
I don't know if CASA is just for Texas. I can't recall, but
I'm
I
I
quite
was
think it
sure
is.
there's another term for it in New York, but I'm that's very interesting. Let me ask you a question. Years ago, they used to like you would see this on television, and I don't know if they ever did do it and I meant to ask this question when I was working, but I never asked. Can say a child is in an institution, not a foster home, okay, and say a family wanted to take them in for the holidays or let them experience Christmas with them or whatever, like Thanksgiving with them, could a family do that?
it's called respite care.
Okay.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
so
I
respite
know
is
what respite care is, yeah.
it's like a temporary placement. It can't last more than 21 days, I believe. And so then, yeah, you could go spend time with a family for those kind of situations. But they are also approved caregivers, like foster parents.
Okay, okay, okay.
And
No,
so they do market for respite care. So being a respite care provider, I'm very glad you brought that up. Is also a good way to enter the system without um, entering just being a foster parent. So respite care are people who come in and say, I will provide care when maybe this foster parent needs a break, or so
Mhm.
children are coming to your home only when their primary caregiver needs a break, or they haven't found a home just yet. And again, they won't be in your home more than likely more than 21 days.
okay. I do remember that as well. So just as we go towards the end of this,
Mhm.
share with us about more about your foundation, more about what you guys do to help foster care and or the system, or what are you guys doing?
But before you do that, I wanted to ask you one question. When did you decide to start your organization?
I started my organization as a sophomore in college.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've always been into charity work. I probably got it from my dad. He loves to give back, and so I love to give back as well. It makes me happy. I love
Okay.
spending the holidays giving back. So I actually like do charity work for the entire month of December, every
Okay.
week. And so I did start it my sophomore year of college, which was it originated in 2015.
Okay. Okay.
And
Very
so
good.
I did start that nonprofit, and I what had to be 19 or 20, and started in 2015. We first started as Volley for the Children, and I love volleyball. I'm a 2-time state champion in volleyball. Love the sport to death, and I got the idea of calling it Volley for the Children because when I was in high school, I used to play in a tournament called Volley for a Cure. And so it was a charity tournament to raise money for breast cancer awareness. And so I said, well, I want to do charity volleyball tournaments to raise money for children in foster care. And so I started doing that in college. And my first tournament in college, I believe I had 20 teams sign up. I had all the people out there donating. We had a silent auction that was able to occur with all donated items. A pizza shop donated pizza that we could sell as concession. The gym was packed, and I want to say we raised around $6,000. And that was my first ever anything. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, I just know I want to do this so that I could give gifts. There was a shelter in the city that I went to. In the city I went to college in, there was a shelter there, and I just knew I wanted to take them gifts and items as well as a nice check for the holidays. And so we threw this tournament and we did just that. And so when we went there, they've been around for a long time out there in Wichita Falls, that shelter. And they were like, this is like the biggest drop off we've ever experienced. And to me, as a 19-year-old in college, I'm like, y'all have been around like 60 something years. That's amazing. So, I said, well, that's something I want to keep doing because I always want to go back. I know what these children don't get to experience. So I want to fill the gap and fill the void and try to bring some of that experience. Don't get to experience. So I want to fill the gap.
That, yeah.
So I wanted to make sure I did that. And so we were Volley for the Children all the way until 2018. I graduated college in 2016. I moved back to Dallas. I was able to still do a lot of good work. I partnered with some great people in Dallas. I ended up changing to throwing parties in Deep Ellum when I was younger, and had the whole city coming out to these parties, raising money so that I could still go back and serve foster youth. So that was really awesome. And just getting that, a lot of people like getting young people to come do philanthropy work was really amazing. And, having people coming, people go out and party all the time, but knowing that you're coming to a party that's taking this money and putting it to the children in the system, a lot of people enjoyed the fact that they were able to do that. And so after I left college and I actually hurt my knee really bad, so I wasn't really doing much volleyball. It gave me the opportunity to sit down and understand now our vision and our name really needs to change. It needs to fit what we're doing now because we outgrew charity volleyball tournaments. And so in April of 2018, I officially changed the name to Fostering Dreams Foundation. And so Fostering Dreams Foundation is exactly what we do today, and we help foster the dreams of these children and the dreams of the people that we encounter. So I changed it to Fostering Dreams Foundation. We rebranded, and it's amazing foundation. And I want to say that same year, I took about 30 children to Dave and Buster's, let them eat and play for free, all on us. Gave them gift bags at the end of that. And the beautiful thing was when those children walked into Dave and Buster's, none of them had ever been there before, which is something that we all get to experience, or we got to experience. But these children have never seen anything that looked like Dave and Buster's before in their life. And to know that they got to go there, do that for free, and they got to be a child, they truly enjoyed that. And I enjoyed that we were able to provide that to them, that's what we do. We provide free normalcy activities for children in foster care. So that way we're telling foster parents, it's no excuse on why this child is not having normalcy or having an experience of normalcy. We're giving it to you for free. You need to bring them to these events and let them do it for free. And so later that year, we ended up doing like a foster parent night out. I rented out a whole gym, and we had like gaming stations, pizza, painting, freeze dance. I had a live artist come in and sing to these children. We ended up giving the foster parents a gift card to a local restaurant in the area we were in. We let them go enjoy a night out, and we had the foster youth there, and we're playing with them, making sure they have fun, sending them home with goodie bags. And again, an experience they're not used to having. And as we continue to grow, we're still a very young organization. And then I developed a board in March of 2020 to help me continue carry out this goal, because we were beginning to reach more and more people that more than one person can handle. So I
Mm.
developed a board. We developed new events. I did make the news this year 3 times. And Chantel got to see that. So this year I did my first annual child abuse awareness walk out here in
Mhm.
Dallas. And it was a very beautiful to just, let people understand the effects of child abuse. We do all these other walks and people don't want to talk about child abuse, although 9 times out of 10, everyone you're in a room with has experienced some type of child abuse. They
Mhm.
might not have went to foster care, but they experienced some type of abuse. So just doing a child abuse awareness walk, getting more people aware of what's going on to our children. And that's why some of the things we see today happening in the world is because of the abuse these children are experiencing.
Yeah.
We wanted to bring light to that, but we didn't do it in a sad way. We understand how sad child abuse is. So we did it in a way to where you understand, some people, we go to court together and we demand justice for these children. So we would put, if a kid's case hadn't closed yet, we would just say justice still needs to be served. This is how you can get involved and help get justice for this child. And then if the case had been closed, we would say justice served on so and so date. So just putting that, spin on it to try to keep it as positive as possible, because children do come to this and not every child understands. So we also do fall festivals each year. Just this year, we took 30 children to the movie theater, rented out a movie theater room, took 30 kids there for free, bought them popcorn, snacks, sent them home with goodie bags, and let them enjoy themselves. We watched The Addams Family too, which is a really cute movie, and
Mhm.
they enjoyed that. This year, we're looking to serve the most children we ever served in our Angel Tree, which is 75 foster youth, which I believe that we could definitely do that, because more and more children are entering the system, and so we're looking to do that. And, we provide free stuff for foster youth. So that way there's no excuse on why they don't get normalcy. And then
Right.
I know you wanted me to talk on some of the other stuff I do. Um,
Mhm.
so I am a entrepreneur, well, not an entrepreneur. I do have a full-time job. But I have 5 companies, and that's what I really want my foster youth to understand. You can overcome and you can become whoever you want to be. And I tell people all the time, I just had a talk with caseworkers this week about watching how you document about children. The way I was documented about, they would have never imagined I would be who I am today. The descriptors of, I was described as a crack baby in documentation. And so then to come back, looking at me at 27 as someone who speaks to millions of people all the time about overcoming this system, would you want to look back and say, I called that girl a crack baby, and look at her now? So we want to watch how we talk about people. And so um, my foundation is what got me to, it really opened the door to all this other stuff, because it taught me all the things I need to do to manage a business, to do what I need to do. I was forced to learn how to design websites out of this. So I designed and built my own website. When you all go to that website, everything on there, every graphic you see, I made myself. I learned how to graphic design myself. Everything on there, make videos myself. So it taught me those things. So then I branched off and started a printing and apparel company, basically because I was always getting shirts made for the foundation. So I was like, well, let me just go ahead and start a company. So I have a printing and apparel company. So we make shirts and we design shirts and all that jazz. And then I am a volleyball fanatic, again, 2-time state champion. Volleyball has caused me to have 4 knee surgeries. So I did finally retire. I said, I'm tired of these surgeries. Let me sit down. But I own and operate my own competitive volleyball organization. And I am one of the youngest club directors out here in the nation, club directors and owners. And I'm the first club out here in DeSoto, Texas. And so what we do is we train girls out there in DeSoto, which is the southern sector of Dallas County, to
Mm.
play competitive level volleyball. And a lot of
Okay.
people actually stay away from that area, but after being adopted, I was raised in DeSoto. So I said, I'll take the bait, I'll go. So I'm very adamant about creating competitive volleyball in the city of DeSoto in the outlying areas, which would be Duncanville, Lancaster. Most times you have to go to North Dallas, Arlington, or further out to get that level of play. And then after that, I believe I have one last company. And so all of my companies, they are engaging with children, which I love children. I love engaging with them and mentoring them. And so my last company is a company I started just for me to have fun. And I always tell people, for me to have grown people fun. So I am a mixologist, TABC certified. And so I have a mixology company and I go to events providing mixology services. I make my own custom beverages, adult beverages, and awesome cute labels. If you have a wedding and you want a customized menu and a customized drink, I'm able to come and do that for you at your events. And that business is called Swanky Spirits. And so those are the 5 companies I know you wanted me to touch on that I own and operate. And the biggest hint of advice I can give anyone is stay disciplined and be adamant about your goals and carry them out no matter what. A lot of people want to know, how can you manage 5 companies
I
and
was
go to
just
work?
thinking that. I was going to jump in with that question.
Yeah.
How do you do that and go to work every day?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. How do you do that? And you still have a full-time job. And one
Right.
thing I always express, and Taylor's probably heard me say it, is work stops at 5 o'clock for me.
Right.
I don't know what y'all have going on. I'm done at 5 p.m. My brain says no more work. And so all of my companies, though, are things that I truly love and enjoy. And I do love my full-time job as well, but these are things that I love and enjoy. So half of the time, it doesn't even feel like work. It just feels like me carrying out my passions.
And that's what it's supposed to feel like.
And so I just make sure that I stay disciplined. And a lot of people think, well, you're always busy. You're always busy. I'm really not. I'm probably busy 3 times out the week, because if you plan correctly, and if you set yourself up for success and you plan correctly, then you will, like at this point in all of my companies, I'm simply executing. You know how you go to work every day and you're just doing the job that they're telling you to do. You're not trying to plan, you're going to do that job. It makes it a lot easier. So all of my companies been, their planning process is over and they're in their execution process. So I just wake up, go do, and go to bed. And I'm not as busy as people think. And so that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. One of the things my mom always says, Val, please don't start another business. I call them every week. Guess what I did? Did you start another company? No, not this week. But that is one of the things I do enjoy about my ADHD. It keeps me going. It keeps me bouncing around. Keeps me, no day is the same for me. And that's how you embrace, when they try to tell you something that is they tell you it's a disability, and it's not. Look, my ADHD has carried me to be able to go into all these different fields, run all these different companies, and then still not be tired at the end of the day. A lot of people are like, I would be tired. I still have tons of energy. I could go start 30 more companies or something like that. Wow. But that's basically, about me and everything that I do, my story and where I am today. And I'm honored that y'all had me here today.
I'm honored that you agreed to be on.
Thank you. Hope there was some insight, and I'm always open to talking about my story or my understanding. And I just encourage everyone to know, no one foster youth story is the same. Of course, this is how I dealt with my trauma and what I went through. But don't take what I said and how I dealt with it and apply it to any other foster youth or their situation, because it will be different for each one of them. But if you do have you have encounters with foster youth, or you think that foster youth needs to hear from someone and you feel that you should reach out, I'm always open to doing those things and talking to anybody.
Good to know. That's good to know. And we're going to share your website and information that will be on our
In the
Facebook
comments.
in the comments, and we're also going to share it on YouTube. So this was very, very good. I really, really enjoyed talking to you. And I know that you're going to be reaching other people outside, maybe get some more business for the 5 companies.
Yes.
Yes.
So that's what I was going to say. I'm going to put your information in the comments, but I want you to just go ahead and say it verbally. right
Okay,
now.
yes. And so if you are wanting to reach out for anything regarding all the information and contact information is the same for the foundation, the printing company, and the volleyball organization. And so you will just reach out to contact at fosteringdreamsdfw.org. That's the email address. Again, contact at fosteringdreamsdfw.org. And the phone number for Fostering Dreams entity is 972-533-3615. And then our website for Fostering Dreams is fosteringdreamsdfw.org.
All
And,
righty.
and then if you want to reach out about Swanky Spirits, the information for that is contact at swankyspirits.com. And then the number is 214-202-6560. And then the website is swankyspirits.com.
All righty then.
Awesome, awesome.
And we want to thank you. And we're
Thank
gonna
you, Valerie.
Thank you all for having me. It was very fun being on today.